So good afternoon from Nigeria. You are all welcome to the Animal Welfare Group Nigeria Seminar Presentation Series. Today is the 19th in the series. So we have had 18. Today's speaker is Jen Yun Chou, an independent researcher and advisor in animal behavior and animal welfare. Jen Yun will be talking on recent issues in pig welfare on commercial farms. How do we find solutions? So Jen, I'll be asking you some few questions before we start the program proper. So we have 7 minutes for the interview. Can you please give us a brief summary about your background? You're from which country? Where do you work? Where are you now?
Sure, thanks, Samuel. Yes, I'm from Taiwan. Originally, my full name is Jen Yun Chou, as Samuel just introduced me, and I'm currently, I'm about to start my postdoctoral position in the VetMed Unit Vienna in Austria. So I will kind of introduce myself during my talk, but then I'll just give a very quick recap. I did my first master's in Science, Technology, and Society in Taiwan, and later on I started another Master's of Science in Edinburgh on applied animal behavior and animal welfare science. And later I finished my PhD also with the University of Edinburgh. And then I actually started a role as Global Animal Welfare Advisor for World Animal Protection. That was only for 6 months, but then it's a very, very interesting 6 months working with a non-government organization on also farm animal welfare issues. And last year, I actually went to the United States, and then I took on a postdoctoral researcher position at the University of Pennsylvania with the swine teaching and research group there, where I'm working. I will tell you all about what I did last year as well. So yeah, that's I'm actually a specialist. Sorry, I specialize in pig behavior and welfare. I didn't say that. But yeah, thanks so much for giving me the opportunity to come here to talk to you. Thanks.
So thank you very much, Jen. A nice background. You have taught so many places, but you are into pig welfare. Why the choice of pig? Why not chickens? Why not cattle?
Thanks. Yeah, very nice question. I think because I coming from an East Asian background, so pig, like pork, is actually one of our main, sources of meat in like China, Taiwan, Japan, and also South Korea. So like we're growing up, consuming quite a lot of pork, and then we had also a very big pig industry back at home. So I think I always had this kind of connection with, I always wanted to improve their welfare back at home. And then in Taiwan, actually, we don't really have that much, talks about animal welfare yet, especially not for farm animals. So I really want to really, start, raising awareness in this area. And I really want to, I really enjoy working with pig in the past 6 years. I've been working with them. And yeah, I think for applied ethologists, they're really a great species to work with. They're very, behaviorally expressive. So yeah, that's how I end up here.
Good, thank you. Was your PhD work on pig?
Yes, my PhD was on tail biting in pigs. And then my master thesis was also on pigs, but on sows. So actually last year in the United States, I also worked with sows. So we try to improve their housing.
Can you, in just 2 seconds, can you please give us an interesting result from your PhD work? Just 1 or 2.
2 seconds. The enrichment is very important. Enrichment is very important. It's not the best, the only thing you have to work on, but it is very, very important.
Good, good. Thank you for that. I know you play a very active role in ISAE, International Society for Applied Ethology. Can you please describe your roles in ISAE?
Yes, of course. I'm currently Assistant Development Officer at ISAE. So our role is really trying to, engage with countries and regions that are, trying to get into animal behavior, get into animal welfare science, and then we try to provide as much resource as we can to, all the students, researchers, or even the public, from these regions. So I'm really happy to be part of it, and I think actually Dr. Yasari and myself, we met, during an ISA conference back in 2019, and then we've been talking since then. And I'm really happy to see her, very actively, trying to promote animal behavior and animal welfare science in Nigeria, which was great. And we're continuing our work. So I will tell, all the audience later that I really, hope that they can follow more of our work. And then whenever we have activities, events, awards, please come to apply, and we want to give you as much, opportunities and resource as we can.
Thank you very much. Worthy of note is that I'm also a member of ISA. I just became a member last month.
Great.
Last month. So thank you very much for that. ISA is a very good society to join. A lot of gains from ISA. Let's look at this other angle. Now we are faced with the issue of climate change, COVID-19. So what is the fate of animal and animal welfare in the face of climate change and COVID-19? Bearing in mind that we just discovered another variant of COVID-19. So what's the fate of our animals?
I think especially in terms of, climate change and sustainability, I think animal farming is definitely one of the, important also role in how we actually can be more sustainable in the future. But I think the problem is sometimes it's not easy. Like sometimes we work on animal welfare issues, but then it doesn't really always correspond very well in terms of sustainability because, in order to be sustainable, of course, we want the animal production to be more efficient, but that doesn't really necessarily translate into better welfare. So I think, we still have but I do feel that there will still be some points that we can actually work together, like, if we don't eat that much meat, then we can actually produce higher quality meat, but then not so higher quantity. But then we can, in this way, we can actually, improve the animals' welfare, even, facing, like disease challenges and then climate change, the challenges from climate change.
Thank you very much for that. The last question before we start the presentation and the program proper. In your title slide, I discovered that you referred to yourself as independent researcher. Can you please tell us more about that? And what are the challenges you are facing as an independent researcher?
Yes, thanks, Samuel. I think as I was mentioning, I was last year doing my postdoc in the States, and then now I'm waiting to start my postdoc in Vienna. I think as an early career researcher, of course, sometimes we're constantly, moving between jobs. So sometimes you have to kind of adapt to that, and then for maybe for a while you're between jobs, so you have to still be able to work independently. You have to be able to continue your research, even though you're not maybe currently employed by an institute. But I think it's in a sense, it is kind of the life for early career researchers. We're devoted to our work. So wherever you are always constantly working on the topic you've been working on. So I think, but then at the same time, because I have this experience of being an advisor in the past, so I can also, have some independent cases with charity groups or other institutes who need some advice from people, who knows about pig behavior and welfare. So I mean, there's some flexibility in it, but of course, then you are still always looking for your next step.
So thank you very much for that, Jen. We are going into the program proper now, and I will start the program by a little introduction. Good afternoon from Nigeria. I am Duro Samuel Olutunde. I work with the Department of Animal Breeding and Genetics, Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta, Ogun State, Nigeria. My area of specialization is livestock genetics and biotechnology. And my area of interest is behavioral genetics and I've been working on welfare and behavior of chicken and turkeys. Chickens, Gallus gallus, turkeys, Melagris gallopavo. I've been working on fear, aggression, play behavior, oral-related behavior, comfort, sleeping, behavior of these two birds. You are all welcome to Animal Welfare Group Nigeria with the acronym AWGN. AWGN was founded in year 2019 after a meeting of students and lecturers in departments that are related to animal science of the Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta, Ogun State, Nigeria. So what are the missions of AWGN? Our missions are to increase awareness of animal behavior and welfare in Nigeria, Africa, and the world at large. We are trying to foster collaboration and networking among researchers who are in the field of animal welfare and behavior. We are also trying to educate the public on the importance of animal welfare. We meet every first and third Wednesdays to discuss issues that are related to animal welfare and behavior. And people from different parts of the world, such as Canada, United Kingdom, Portugal, Netherlands, Australia, Malaysia, Switzerland, United States of America, and Nigeria have presented on issues that are related to ethical practices, SLURRY, fear, stress, cognition, neuroscience, archery practices, wildlife welfare in livestock, wildlife animals, and fishes. And we have 17 scientists that have presented 18 talks on animal welfare and behavior. And today's presentation will be the 19th, number 19 in the series. And today's presenter is Jen Yun Chou, who is an independent researcher and advisor in animal behavior and animal welfare. Jen Yun will be talking on recent issues in pig welfare on commercial farms. How do we find solution? And today I'm the host and I'm also the moderator. Like I said earlier on, my name is Duro Sharon Samuel Olutunde from the Department of Animal Breeding and Genetics, Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta, Ogun State, Nigeria. And my area of interest is behavioral genetics. So today I will read the bio of the presenter, then I give the rules, then Jen can start her presentation. Dr. Jen Yun Chou gained her MSc in Applied Animal Behavior and Animal Welfare at the University of Edinburgh in 2015. She remained at the University of Edinburgh to do a PhD in Clinical Veterinary Sciences. A PhD project being strategies to manage tail biting in pigs housed in fully slated system. Since she completed a PhD, she spent 6 months working as Global Animal Welfare Advisor at World Animal Protection, working with experts and stakeholders collaboratively to explore issues surrounding ending tail docking, teeth reduction, physical and surgical castration in pigs. Since 2020, she has been undertaking a postdoctoral research at the Swine Teaching and Research Center at the University of Pennsylvania, focusing on sow housing in early gestation. Currently, she is in Austria and waiting to start her Marie Curie postdoctoral fellowship. So thank you very much. These are the rules of our presentation. Please, when you join us, kindly mute yourself. And when you join, please, you can stop your video. And if you have any question, you drop it in the chat box. We are going to read out all the questions. And I know Jen will do justice to all the questions. So Jen, over to you for your presentation. Thank you. So Jen, let me try and see to unmute you. So Jen, can you please unmute yourself?
Yes, thank you, Samuel. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can all hear you.
Okay, so I will share my screen now so that you can all see my presentation. And thank you, Samuel, again for your wonderful introduction. I'm really happy to be a part of the Animal Welfare Group Nigeria, very wonderful series of talks, and then also the inaugural talks. That was really amazing. And as Samuel said, that yeah, my name is Jen Yun Chou. I am currently an independent postdoctoral researcher, and I'm waiting to start my postdoctoral fellowship in Vienna, Austria. And I want to first thank, I think, yeah, Sean is here. So Dr. Oluwaseun Iyasahe for her very kind invitation so that I can speak here. I've known Sean since 2019 when we met in the International Society for Applied Ecology conference. And since then we've been talking. I was just saying to Samuel that I really admired all the things, wonderful things she's been doing to really promote applied ecology and animal welfare science in Nigeria or in Africa regions in general. So, and as I was saying to Samuel earlier, I'm the Assistant Development Officer in our ICAE society, and I really, we really try to provide all the resources we can to really promote the knowledge of applied ecology and animal welfare science. So I really hope that everyone here can keep following our work, keep following our activities. If there's a award, please come and apply. And then we really want to, get to engage as much as we can. So today I'm going to actually talk about, like, based on my experience, what are the recent issues in pig welfare on the current commercial farms, and how we as applied ethologists and animal welfare scientists, how do we try to find solutions for all the problems we have. So just give you a brief outline of what I will be talking about today. So I will tell you a little bit about myself to you, and then about the pigs and pig production, because Dr. Yasser told me that maybe some of you are not very familiar with, pigs or pig production in general. It is probably not the main focus of farm animal welfare in African regions. And then later on, I will talk about the current pig welfare issues. So I have to bring up two case studies that I have been working on in my projects. The first one will be tail biting and tail docking, and then the second one will be the confinement issue for sows. And I will especially focus on mating stall. I will explain that later, don't worry. And then finishing up, hopefully give you some take-home message. And I really would love to hear what you think about what is the current behavior, pig welfare issues in the region that you are working in. And I'm really happy if we can have some exchange about that. So just Samuel already gave a very great introduction to me. So I would just very briefly mention I am from Taiwan, and I got my first master in science, technology, and society back home. So it is also a very multidisciplinary subject. So basically, it is an intersect between natural science, social science, and humanity, and we really trying to study how science and technology works in the society. And later, I started working with really farm animal welfare issues when I was in Taiwan. It wasn't really a topic that gained much attention by then, and even until now, we're still working on it. So I'm working with this non-government organization, animal group in Taiwan, who's actually the first one who trying to raise issue on farm animal welfare in Taiwan. And then I really want to get more professionally trained in this area. So that's why I took on the MSc in applied behavior and animal welfare science at the University of Edinburgh. And then later on, which leads me to start my PhD also with Edinburgh on the strategies to manage tail biting in pigs. I will definitely share more about it with you. After my PhD, yes, I worked as a global animal welfare advisor with worm detection. I think that's a very new experience, really working hand in hand with a non-government organization, professionally, and how to provide advice on the very key pig welfare issues on the front line. And last year, I went to the United States and started my postdoc project on housing for post-weaned sows, and I will also going to share with you more on that. And I think just to give you this background, just to show you that I really come from a very problem-solving approach. So I see we all recognize that there are currently problems in our farming systems, especially with pigs, and then how do we actually find some solutions to this problem, and then make it feasible. So I will just very quickly talk about pigs. I don't know how much you know about pigs, but then they are very interesting bunch. They are natural omnivores, so basically means that they eat anything, vegetables, and some meat as well. And then in the semi-natural environment, let's say they actually spend 75% of their time just foraging for food, looking for food, and they are very inquisitive and explorative. So I'm gonna just show you a clip here. I hope you can see that. So they love to use their snout to dig, to explore and to try to find things, in the dirt, on the ground. And also here you can also see that they're also very highly social species. So they love to spend time with their conspecifics. And yeah, they're very curious bunch. So, but at the same time, they are indeed farm animals. So we have a huge pig production across the whole world. So if you see here, this is data from FAO, and in 2018, you can already see that in terms of the meat produced globally, pork is actually #1, even surpass chicken meat. So they're having a lot of pork being produced globally. If we look at more, breaking it down, that most of the meat is produced in China, and then followed by the United States. And then in Europe, the biggest producer is Germany. So then if we look at the number of pigs that, we currently have worldwide in 2021, so you can see that a huge number of pigs are kept in China, and then followed by European Union in general, and the United States. And also you can see that in East Asia, where I come from, like South Korea and Japan and China, we also keep a lot of pigs there as well. I think that's also, I was telling Samuel, that's one of the reasons actually why I wanted to work with pigs, and have been working with pigs since. So if we further look at closely on how pig production looks like in the EU, so as I was saying, Germany is the largest producer, followed by Spain, France, Poland, the Netherlands, and Denmark, and then the rest of the other EU countries. So there are a lot of pigs being kept on commercial systems. So how were they usually, what kind of system they were usually kept? So you can see here, one of the more extensive measure is the outdoor pig farming at a larger scale, or it can be even more extensive, like the Iberics in Spain. So it can be really free-ranging and in a very large area. Or in some areas, maybe I'm guessing in Africa, in East Asia, Southeast Asia, we also maybe Latin America, we also still have this smallholder farming with more like a backyard farming. And on the other hand, we also have a very more kind of intensive systems where pigs are kept indoors. So they can be kept indoors in deep litter systems like this, or they can also have some outdoor access, regardless how they were kept indoor. Or more commonly now in the EU, that they have maybe partly slatted floor, which means that some part of the floor is solid, so you can put some substrates, as you can see here on the photo, or they can also be kept on fully slatted floor. So you can see here, I will talk more about fully slatted floor later. So there are many different types of pig production system. And in terms of the pig production cycle, I'll just go very quickly in case you probably, maybe you are familiar with pig production. So basically the sows, when they're pregnant, so they are going into the gestation unit, and afterwards they will be given birth. So they go to the farrowing unit, and usually the pregnancy is about 115 days, the farrowing 3 weeks to 5 weeks, depending on different production system. And afterwards, the cells, the piglets are weaned, so taken off the mother, and then they will immediately go into mating again. So usually it's by artificial insemination. They will get pregnant almost within a week, so they will go back into the production cycle. And for the growing pigs, so once they were taken off from their mother, they will go into the weaner unit, and some places they also have the grower unit, just depending on their weight and what type of feed they're getting. And then they later on end up in the rearing unit, or sometimes we call it finishing unit, before they are sent to slaughter. So this, for the growing pigs, this period usually takes about 20 to 25 weeks. So that's kind of the whole production cycle of pigs. So indeed, I think since the turn of the century, there is a very a gradual trend of intensification on how we actually keep pigs. And the outdoor farmers move more and more into indoor confinement system. The stocking density is getting higher, but at the same time they're getting maybe a better quality of concentrated feed for higher growth and return. But of course, then comes all the welfare issues where we may be encountering now. So the first thing is, of course, they're brought indoors. So usually there's a lack of space, and then they could be. I will talk about it later. Like the cells can be confined in a very small, pen that they cannot even turn around during the whole of their pregnancy. And then for the growing pigs, the environment can be really non-stimulating. There's nothing that they can explore and forage with. And also many of the husbandry practices that we do very routinely actually disrupt pig social life. For example, the weaning time in the semi-natural environment, the piglets, they gradually wean off their mothers, usually take 8 to 19 weeks. But then in the commercial systems, this process usually happens after 3 to 4 weeks. And then also the pigs are constantly exposed to mixing, regrouping, which means that they are constantly put together with other pigs that they don't know. And then, as I was saying, that they are very highly social, so they recognize their partners, their kind of specifics, and then by constantly mixing them, we're creating a lot of aggression and other problems. And also the modern breeding and genetics can also cause some issue to their health or even to their behavior. So next, I'm going to talk about the first case, which is a behavior problem that's very commonly seen, especially in the intensive indoor farms. So this is tail biting in pigs. So for those of you who are probably not familiar what is tail biting, it is when one pig, you can see on the picture, he just manipulates the tails. It bite, chew on the other pig's tail. This can cause injuries, pain, and then even infection will come into the bloodstream and go into their spinal cord. So it could also cause premature death. So it is a very serious welfare issue. Of course, they're feeling painful, and it's very disruptive in terms of their social life. And also it is a production issue because the producers can be potentially losing a lot of money if tail biting actually happens. It happens when pigs' tails are long, as you can see on the left-hand side, but it also happens when the pigs' tails are cut shorter. So I will talk about the cutting later. So one of the difficult things about managing tail biting is it is a multifactorial behavior. By that, I mean that you can see here on the graph, this is just a graph kind of summarizes all the different factors that could involve that cause tail biting. So it can be the stimulation of the environment is lacking, disease, or feeding, or their diet, or just some pigs, they are prone more to tail biting than others, or the climate, or the ventilation. A lot of things involved, so which makes it very difficult to control and predict. So one of the things that the farmers sometimes do is to cut the pig's tail. So this is what we call tail docking. So it is a painful procedure. So basically, the part of the pig's tail were just cut off, usually after 1 or 2 days after they are born, and although in the EU, actually tail docking has been banned as early as like 1994, people are talking about it. And then in 2008, the Council directive actually said that we shouldn't tail dock, routinely. But still, based on the 2018 survey data shows that in the EU, still we have a prevalence of 77% of tail docking, on average. And in Ireland, when I did my PhD actually in 2012, almost 99% of the pigs are tail docked. So why is that? Why is the law is not stopping that? It's because, as we said earlier, tail biting is very difficult to prevent. So the directive actually said that they shouldn't, tail docking should not be done routinely, but there are some exceptions that you can do it. For example, if you have proof showing that you have tail biting problem on your farm, then you can do it. But in reality, is that this exception makes things very difficult to enforce. So that's why we still have a very high prevalence of tail docking, even in the EU. So another difficult thing to when we try to find solutions for the farmers to deal with tail biting is that we are usually working, as I was saying earlier, the fully slutted slurry system. So in this type of system, you can see on the photo that there are holes basically on the floor. So you cannot provide substrates or rooting materials on the floor. Otherwise, you will just block the hose. So the hose is for the pig's feces and urine. They can go down into a big slurry tank, so you can keep the pens really clean. So you cannot provide anything on the floor, or if you provide something, they might actually block your slurry system. So it is very problematic, and we know that pigs need those materials to root, and it is one of the main causes of tail biting. So in Ireland, when I was working, almost 80% of the farm are using this system. So when we're thinking about how do we find solutions to farmers to deal with tail biting, we really have to think of something practical that can work in this system, because we want to keep the conversation open with the farmers. We don't want them to be put off saying that, oh, you actually have to change your whole system, otherwise it won't work. And also the other things, we do want to find something that's economically feasible so that they can actually do something, manage to do something. So we focus on environmental enrichment and dietary modification, which is we give them a lot of, we want to try high fiber. So these two options are kind of the easier way to try to improve something. So, and then I think these are also the two things that the Irish farmer, they are really hoping to try it out and then to see whether it works or not. So that's why we are focusing on that. So I started my PhD in 2015 back then, and then at the beginning we really just trying out a lot of different types of wood as enrichment material for the pig. The reason we did that was because Irish farmer, they actually do like to use wood. Wood is quite cheap in Ireland, and then it is very versatile, so you can make it into very different shapes, and you can provide it in different ways. So, and later on I also did further 3 studies to really use undocked pigs to try our strategies out. So in my talk later, I will more focus on the 3 studies that we actually use pigs that their tail are not docked. I think that would be more relevant and interesting. So just to quickly tell you about, when I first started my PhD, I really measure a lot of wood. So we really want to make sure that although the farmers, they love to use wood as enrichment, we don't really know, does the different types of wood actually matter when you give the pigs as enrichment to play with? And then how does it matter for them? Like if we use different types, do they play with it more, or is it more effective or not? So then, and then we also want to make sure that wood is safe for the pig to use. That's also a very important attribute for enrichment when you provide it to the pigs. So we didn't find, although we didn't find major effect on tail biting in docked pigs, but then at least we ascertained that the wood is very safe for pigs to use. They are natural omnivores, so they're very good at actually chewing off the wood, as you can see on the photo here. And also, when I talk about my studies later on, I was really happy. This is also for early career researchers, that when you think about your projects, it's really good to use consistent methods across your studies, so that it will be much more easy to compare your results between your studies. So I always use the same leading scoring system. My pigs were indeed raised in the same facility, and then I took the same behavior measures, and then they always follow, the same duration. And also we conducted a lot of the inspection in the slaughterhouse just to make sure that we really get all the data we needed. So for the first study, that's actually when we first wanted to do something to see whether we can actually raise pigs with long tails on fully slatted floor. So at that time, we only used one single enrichment. So they get either a rubber toy, as you can see on the left-hand side, or they get a piece of the wood, the one that they prefer the most based on our previous studies. And then we also changed their how much fiber they had in their diet. So either they have the really high dietary fiber, or they have the standard fiber. But then unfortunately, actually, we found that the high fiber didn't really help too much. Actually, it caused more tail biting. We think that it's probably because, once they have a very high fiber diet, their feces become very soft. So they may be having, so their hind quarter become very dirty. So sometimes it actually attracts other pigs' attention. And also, of course, we're using single space feeders. So sometimes they will be queuing at the feeders, which may also cause more tail biting to happen. And the two enrichment items we give them didn't really actually differ too much in their effect on reducing tail biting, because they only have one every 14 pigs. So at the end of this study, we found that we actually have a very high level of tail biting. We had 26 tail biting outbreaks, and then 70% of the pigs with a certain level of tail loss at the end of the study. And we actually had to remove almost 200 pigs, for medical treatment because there was tail biting. So after the first study, we really want to use a more complicated, complex enrichment strategies. We think that we have to try this to know that whether it will actually work on fully slatted floors. So the next two studies, we basically just really bombarded them with all the enrichment items we can think of that will work on fully slatted floors. So you can see here is just some example in the middle. We'll try, we have like dispenser for some different types of loose materials, and we have a lot of hanging items. We also put something on the floor that's not going to be easily, become dirty. And we know that how pigs love to use their snout to, push or dig something on the floor. So then in my last study, you can see on the left-hand side here that we have really just 8 different types of items for during the weaner stage and the finisher stage, and then just to make sure that all the pigs can have something they can interact during their busy times. And then we found that the tail biting level is much lower compared to the previous study. And in one of the studies, we also tried to give them some enrichment before they are weaned from their mothers, but then we actually didn't find a lot of effect on that. And then we found that the more frequent we actually replenish the enrichment, especially for the loose materials, they actually did have a very good effect of they perform less harmful behavior, and also it promotes their growth. So here I'm just I really love to show this video to in my talk. So this is one of the pens I had during one of the studies, and you can see that these pigs are just, I think, 2 weeks after weaning, so they are being very, very active. And then you can see that we have 8 different items in the pen, and then they are all very actively engaging in them. I mean, this is really what we want to see. And also you can see that there are also some sometimes 2 pigs are playing with the same items, which is also something that we want to see. But of course, if you see closely, this is definitely fast forwarded. If you see closely, there are still some manipulation of the other pig's ear or tail, but then they can always find something else better to do rather than keep going at it and causing more injuries or even more damages. So this is what we want to see. And if we compare the findings of the 3 studies I've done with undocked pigs, we can see really a dramatic reduction in, for example, in the number of pigs that were actually affected by tail biting and need to be treated with antibiotic, and also the number of outbreaks we have, and also the percentage of pigs actually without any tail amputation at the end of the study was, greatly improved in my later study 3. So we're really happy to see this, that the enrichment, we're only doing not very, huge changes. We're only giving them some enrichments that can work in the same system, and we're really happy to see already such an improvement. So during the course of my PhD, we also think that it is very important that the farmers need to know how to control the tail biting outbreaks. So when the really bad thing just happens so quickly, sometimes it's almost impossible to actually prevent it from happening in any farming system, really, because as I was saying, tail biting is really unpredictable. But then the farmers need to learn how to deal with it, and then you can actually. So we tried 3 different types of control protocol, and then during all my studies, we randomized them, and then we tested out how do we actually stop tail biting from getting worse when outbreaks happens. So we managed to control 80% of the very severe tail biting outbreaks with our protocol, and then we also managed to reintroduce all the pigs that if at any point we need to remove them, we can reintroduce them back to their home pens. So some reflections from my 4 years of PhD. We do think that it is difficult to find a silver bullet to cure tail biting in the current pig farming systems. But then you have to really start working on something, which is very good to start by giving them some suitable enrichment items, and then we managed to actually prove that there are a lot of enrichment, different ways that you can provide enrichment to the pigs even on fully slatted floors. And it's also very important, like I have been learning, and I've been learning with the staff on our farm how to deal with tail biting when it happened, and then at the end, we all agree that actually letting the pigs have their tail intact is really a very good indicator of the health of your herd. So when the pigs actually had the long tail, you can very easily see how maybe they are not feeling well. They will put their tails down between their legs, or when they're happy, they're all healthy and well, their tails will be curled out, as you can see in the picture. So, but then if you cut the tail really short, then you cannot really have that, and then it's actually a very sad thing. And so it is quite important for the farmers to really change the mindset instead of like, I have to do tail docking because I cannot do anything about tail biting. We really suggest them to, start trying something, and then start trying to lead the tails, and then to see how it goes. And then, and then learn to deal with something bad when tail biting really happens. So all my studies during my PhD have been published. If you're interested, I cannot go into too much detail for all of them, but please feel free to get more information out of our paper. And so the second case I'm going to talk about is more related to the postdoc project I did last year in this state. So it is about confinement of sows. So there are many different issues in terms of sow confinement. So the most common one you probably will hear about is sow stall. So this is referring to, sometimes they're calling it gestation crate. So on the picture on the left-hand side, you can see that basically the sows, they are housed in this very, very tiny crate that they cannot even turn around for the whole duration of their pregnancy. So that's like 115 days of their life. And another thing is the farrowing crate, not to be confused with sow stall. So farrowing crate is when as I was saying earlier about the production cycle. So when the sows are, when they're giving birth, after they gave birth, they will be housed in this on the right hand side photo. So they will be housed here when they are with the piglets. So also they cannot turn around. I mean, this is usually done because the farmers want to protect the piglets, because sometimes if the sows, they think that if the sows doesn't move well, then she may potentially crush and kill the piglet. So there are 2 different issues in terms of confinement of sow. So for the sow stall, it's where definitely getting a better progress. It is banned in the EU since 2013, so nobody can use that. And then also in New Zealand as well, and in some states in the United States. And it is also raising a lot of debates in other regions, for example, even in Taiwan, where I come from. But for firing crate, of course, there are not so much attention yet. In the EU, there's already starting, discussion, and I think a general ban is set to come in 2023, so that they cannot, farmers can no longer house the sows, even when, during the lactation period, they cannot house sows in firing crates. So if you're interested to know more about the latter, firing crate issue, there is a very great website, freefiring.org, just talking a lot about what is free firing, why are we doing that. Free firing basically means that, not using firing crates so that the sows can be free during lactation. So there are a lot of great information there. So what I'm going to talk about is actually a slightly different thing. It's called the mating stall. So the mating stall is still in use when the sows are indeed housed in groups, so not using sow stall. But then it is used when during a very specific period of time, which is after weaning. So usually it means 3 days to 35 days. So this is the time that it is very dynamic, because the sows are weaned, so the piglets are taken off. So they're going through a lot in terms of their physical strength, because they just finished a long duration of lactation. They're very weak, and physiologically they are also going through a lot of hormonal changes. They will come in heat, and they will be artificially inseminated. They will get pregnant again. And then also psychologically, because they're just weaned from the piglets, are also very stressful time for the sows. So sometimes mating stalls are used in this specific time, to protect the sows. So why are farmers using that? So as I was, telling you that because this is a very dynamic period, so by using mating stalls, the farmer thinks that it can also reduce or maybe delay the aggression, which means that because when sows they're taking off their piglets, they have to be regrouped together, and they don't necessarily know each other. So there will be a lot of aggression happening. So some studies suggested that during this period of time, there are more aggression than later on when the sows actually, are more pregnant. And also during this time, because they will be coming heat again, so they will do a lot of mounting behavior. So basically they will just, jump on the other sow. And in a sense, it is like, for us to see, it is kind of dangerous, because if their leg is not very healthy, they could they could potentially hurt their leg. They could also hurt the other sow that they were mounted, so if they don't stand properly. And then at the same time, the farmers need to do artificial insemination. So, housing them in stalls just makes their work easier. But of course, using mating stall, we really prevent any proper social interaction between the sows. And they, we know that now that they're very social animals, they do like to have social interaction with their conspecifics. And then it is also prolonged confinement for them, another week or a month where they cannot move around. And then also some studies show that group housing actually can promote their behavior, estrus behavior. They can express their heat behavior better. But mating stall is indeed a help for the farmers who are currently trying to move from using the whole gestation stall during the whole pregnancy to group housing, because they're still learning. They don't know how to do it properly. So that's why when we look at how farmers actually house sows after weaning, there's a lot of variation across the world. So in the States, some of the states, they still use sow stall widely, so the sows are always kept in stall. But in some states, they say that the sows cannot be housed in stall anymore, especially in the state of California and Massachusetts. What's special about these two states is that they specifically say that they cannot even be housed. So basically, a mating stall cannot be used. Once they're finished their lactation, the sows should be free to move around, not confined in any way. And then the California legislation is even more impactful in the sense that it doesn't only regulate the sows that are kept in California. It also states that all the pork that wants to be sold into California, you have to, comply to our legislation as well. So California is not a big pork producing state, but it is indeed a very big pork consumption state, which means that this legislation is going to have a great impact on all the pig producing states in the United States of America. So that's why I think this is also kind of a trigger of my postdoc project. We want to know more about what's happening during this period. And just to quickly mention that in the UK, Sweden, Norway, there's already a complete ban on using any type of sow stall, so mating sow no longer used. And in the EU, it really differs where you are now, and some of them have a harder restriction, and some of them can allow the mating cell being used up to 4 weeks, and also similar in Australia and New Zealand. So when I first started my postdoc project, the first thing we did is really to did a very thorough systematic literature review. I really recommend this for researchers, early career researchers, especially before you start a study. You want to know very clearly what has been done already, so that you don't want to do the same thing, and you want to build on the current knowledge. And then what we found was that actually only 3 studies look at the very period that we're interested in, which is the 1 week after weaning. And then most of the measures that were taken in these studies, they are looking at aggressive behavior, lesions, lameness, body condition score, or gait score. But what we are trying to understand is more the psychological well-being, or the holistic well-being of the sows, and also try to answer what is best from the sows perspective. And at the same time, we'll also keep in mind that the sow housing environment we're working in is indeed fully slatted. Smaller group hens may be more. We compare 3 different housing. Either they are housed in small groups of 6, where they can freely move around, like with their the other cells, as you can see here, or they are housed in conventional mating stall at the right-hand side. We also include a control group, which is they're housed in individual pen, where they can actually turn around. They can have some free movement, but they cannot, have full body contact with other cells. So I think another very important thing when I started is that to think about how can we really evaluate cell welfare in a very holistic way. So we use a very heavy load of behavior observation, because we do think that behavior will give us a clue of their welfare status, and it can also be a good outcome of a good welfare. So we use direct behavior scanning, continuous posture scanning for 24 hours, and also look at their activity time budget. We of course still score their lesions, and we also use behavior tests to try to find out more from the cell's perspective, and we will also attempt to use qualitative behavior assessment. So all these combined together, we hope that it can give us a more holistic view on cell's welfare. So here I'm just going to show you, a clip about, when I was doing the 24 hours posture scanning of the cell. I think the interesting thing here is that this is the time that we try to really look at them over the whole 24 hours. And then because most of the time when we do behavior observation, we only focus on daylight time when they're active. But as you can see here, even after the lights are turned off during the night, the cells are still very active, surprisingly. So they've been turning around a lot. They've been getting up, lying down. So by doing the 24-hour scanning, we hope to understand more about the impact of different housing across the whole day for the cell, and not just when they're active during the day. And this is just, I'll just quickly tell you about the behavior test I use. So basically, we want to know how the cell feels about the stall that they are housed in. So we basically test them twice. Well, once before they are, some of them are going to be housed in the stall for a week, and then 1 week later after the housing treatment. And then we also introduce a kind of a control pen that we have only a novel object in it, so that we can make sure that whatever interaction we recorded when the cell are in the arena test to interact or not to interact with the stall, it's not just because they, maybe some cells, they may be more prone to novelty. They just like to interact with whatever thing they see in the arena. So in this way, we hope that we can record whether the cell actually reduce the time they would like to spend in that crate, if they are actually housed in that crate, confined in that crate for 1 week or not. So actually, currently, I'm still analyzing a lot of the data we collected. We did collect a lot of data. So unfortunately, I won't be able to share with you the results. We're still working on that. But preliminarily, actually, we didn't actually found a difference in the novel arena test I just mentioned to you. We didn't find a different response to the stall between all the housing treatments, and also we didn't find a difference in terms of the cortisol level. So we took a saliva sample from them before and after the test, so we didn't find a difference there either. But just to give you some reflection after my postdoc project, I think it is really important for us to think better. How do we evaluate pig welfare under the context of different farming operations? And during the course of my study, I also start rethink about the definition of confinement. So usually we think of confinement as the restriction of space, right, movement. But then actually, after our study, I think we also need to consider the social element, which is very important for sows, for pigs. So when if they can freely move around, but then only with themselves, not with their conspecifics, is that also kind of psychological confinement for them as well? And finally, I think it's also very important that we keep in mind that we can still make incremental changes. So we maybe start asking, can we actually do a better regrouping strategy? So we do need to put the cells, stranger cells together, but can we do it better? Can we give them a better environment so that if they need to fight, they can fight better, safer, so that they don't hurt themselves? Or we can even ask, can we have cells that with better leg health, so that if they need to mount, if they need to fight, but then they can do it in a normal way so that they won't hurt themselves? Or maybe during the lactation, can we give them better nutrition so that they are stronger when they go through the very dynamic period? So my next steps is, as I was saying, I'm going to start my postdoc here in Vienna. It is a collaboration between Chagas in Ireland, where I did my PhD, and then at Uni Vienna, and also INSEAD in France. So I think in my next step, I really want to go back to the basics to understand more about pig social structure. In general, I think this is very important because I have been always working in in an environment that we're trying to fix the negative, let's say, aspects of pigs' life. But I think sometimes we have to understand the basics of how do they form their social structure, how that really impacts whether they will have a certain behavior or not. I think this is important for me as well to think about, and also to think about new ideas about how do we improve husbandry practices, or can we give some better interventions, and also to constantly develop robust biomarkers, behavior indicators, or welfare assessment tools to be able to evaluate pigs' emotional state as a whole. So finally, I just want to kind of leave you with a take-home message that I have been learning during the course of my research projects with pigs. I think it is always very important for me to find a solution on what the animals prefer, but then at the same time thinking very hard about how to make it feasible in the current system we're working in. And we don't stop asking questions there, because of course the current system we're working in may not be perfect. There should be changes made, but then it is important to make incremental changes. Small changes matters, and to keep the conversation with the stakeholders like farmers, and then to make them understand that yes, you can make changes, but then just small steps. So lastly, I just want to acknowledge my supervisors. I have been really fortunate to work with a really great team since my PhD, Dr. Kenny O'Driscoll, Dr. Reddy, Dr. Dale Sandokan, Professor Lawrence, and also my supervisors during my postdoc in the state, Professor Thomas Parsons, and also the wonderful staff I work with in Ireland, the Chagas Peak Research Facility, and also the New Bolton Center at the University of Penn. And also thank Dr. Erin Cameron for her mentorship, and also Dr. Amy Haig and Constance, and then also my wonderful colleagues when in Ireland in the Chagas Peak department. So last but not least, I want to thank you for your attention, and really happy to be here, and I'm happy to answer your questions, or if you can share what you think is the current pig welfare issue in Nigeria or in the region you are based in, I will be happy that we can make some exchange. Thank you.
Thank
you
you
so much.
Dr. Yaseri, you can continue.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jen Yun, for the lovely presentation on welfare of pigs. It's an eye-opening area, really, because to the best of my knowledge, I think little is still being done as regards pig welfare in Nigeria. And we have lots of questions here for you. So I'll start with one of the questions I have noted down here. The first thing that comes to mind when you talk about enrichment, it's the cost implication, or how will it affect maybe the cost of production. So is it really true? What can you say about that? Does it really have an effect on the cost of production? Oh, Dr. Drew, you need to unmute Jen, please. Dr. Drew, you need to unmute her. So
Thanks, Sean. Nice to see you. Thanks. I don't know if you have joined at that time. I was just telling the audience that I really admire the things you've been doing, in the animal welfare group in Nigeria, and wonderful work, really. Yeah, I'm really happy to, we continue working with each other on this, and I'm really happy to see, so great initiative. So yes, I think the very interesting question. So the cost, of course, it is one of the topic that we should talk about. I think in my last study, we tried to do a little bit of the the cost analysis to see how much that will create a burden maybe for the producers. But as far, there are some studies attempt to do that. I think it is an important thing, but then I think the material itself enough. So what I calculated was the cost for the materials itself. But then actually the more difficult to calculate, but the more important aspect is the labor. So usually it's how much time the staff have to spend renewing or replenishing, giving them new ones. So that is the part that I don't think that currently a study has been done, but it needs to be done, because that's the thing that the farmer, the producers really care about. Because the labor cost is of course the #1 cost in all production systems, I assume. So yes, that's a very important point. And then as I was saying, materials, maybe actually we didn't find a huge amount of increase in the cost of the materials, but then we still need to talk about labor.
Thank you so much. I still have another question. Is tail biting, is it age dependent? Does it happen only at the piglet stage or at any time in the life cycle of the pigs?
So great question, thanks. I think some studies kind of found conflicting results, but as our experience, usually the peak will be about let's say 4 to 5 weeks after weaning. So let's say 10 weeks or so when of age of the pigs. That's the kind of the peak of when they want to do tail biting. When they get much older, they don't do that anymore. Like for example, the sows, they don't normally tail bite. But then for growing pigs, they usually like tame. But then some study also find that in later finishing stage, they also do that, usually because they get bigger. If they don't have more space, then they start, tail biting. So we don't know if it's effect of age or effect of age plus, weight and space.
Okay, thank you so much. You talked about the use of dietary fiber as a form of nutritional enrichment. Lade Jobi Afusat wants to know what other examples of dietary enrichment can be used apart from the use of fiber.
Thanks, Lade Jobi. Yes, thanks a lot for the question. I think I didn't explain it clearly, more in detail, but we didn't really use, let's say, fiber as a dietary enrichment. The rationale behind using diet, the high fiber diet, is like in some study with sows, they found that when sows have very high fiber diet, they become less active, they become calmer. So they because they chew, they can digest slowly, so they don't get all agitated about food and about general activity level. So that's why we think that we're not sure whether the same effect will happen with growing and finishing pigs. So I think in terms of the, let's say, dietary composition, I'm not sure I would call it enrichment. Some studies shown that the protein level is important, and also the on the top of my head, like some amino acid will really matter. Like for example, I think some studies have shown like giving them magnesium in their diet actually help them to reduce some level of tail biting. Or like for example, tryptophan is also another dietary element that can kind of calm the pigs down, so they become more like relaxed. They don't they are not so agitated.
Yeah, thank you. There is a study in chickens that reported a contradictory result, that the use of enrichment did not enhance play behavior in chickens. In pigs now, what is your take on it? Is there
Very
any
interesting
negative implication, or do you think the use of enrichment actually enhance play behavior?
I think that's a very interesting question. Actually, it has been discussed. So also in our study, we also found some similar things. So in my first two study, when they only have, like, we only gave one piece of wood to, a pen of 7 pigs. So the one that get the better wood, let's say, actually tail bite more. So we want to know why. Why is that you get the better enrichment? But actually we found that it's because the quality of the enrichment is not enough. So it basically stimulates them to start, they're chewing, biting, foraging behavior, but then it cannot consummate. It's not enough for them. So they become even more bitey, because you give a one good enrichment, but then they want to bite more things, and then that's not enough. So I think that's one danger of not giving appropriate enrichment, and you only give one. It kind of stimulate them to be more bitey and chewy, but then it's just not enough, and then there might be competition between the pigs that I want to use this, he wants to use this too. So yeah, I think that's the thing. But I think in general, I remember that if the enrichment is good, let's say, usually it will stimulate play behavior. But yeah, interesting that you mentioned the chicken study, that it didn't really generate more play behavior.
Yeah. So I noticed that you categorize the piglets, some as the biters and some as the victims, which is good. But the biters, does it have anything to do with the sex or the level of aggression, or does it have anything to do with maybe their body size? What actually makes a piglet influences it or makes it to be a biter than, or a victim?
That's Sean, that's $1 million question. we really want to find out, like, so one thing to mention is that usually some pigs, you know, the label I gave them is not necessarily so consistent over time. But of course, some pigs are more like, you know, they like to bite more, and then they are less being bitten. So I think for the biters, yes, I mean, some studies show that, you know, usually smaller pigs, they are more prone to bite, just because, you know, they are less resourceful. Sometimes they use tail biting as a technique to get the resource they want. But usually we don't associate tail biting with aggression. So let's say the more aggressive pig, they don't necessarily tail bite more. I think that the biter, some believe that there are some genetics in it. So some pigs, they are, you know, just they were born more, you know, easy. They just want to chew something. The motivation to chew and bite is much higher than some other pigs. You know, just they were born like that. It could be, you know, prenatal influence. We don't know yet because there's just so little study on that. We don't know what's happening. But then that's a very interesting question. I think I would love to know that. I always feel like I'm connected to the biters, and I don't know what's happening to them, but I really want to find out.
Yeah, that's good. And another thing that comes to mind is, hope I'm not forgetting the question about, just take, what is the best non-behavioral test used to measure the level of fear in pigs?
The level of fear. Usually, I mean, like the novel arena test will be one of them. So the traditional novel arena test is like you just introduce the pig into an empty arena with nothing, and he just by himself. Then you can actually observe how he or she reacts in the arena. That would be one way to go. And also depending on what type of fear you're referring to, if you're referring to fear for humans, then we have, you know, all sorts of different tests. You can do a human approach test, or you can put a pig in the novel arena, then put a human in it, and to see how fearful they are. Yeah, I think probably, and then yeah, like novel object tests, and some people try to use the T-maze or the cross-maze test also to see how good the pig is to explore in this type of situation. Also, kind of evaluate their level of fear.
Thank you. Son wants to know that thinking about a large-scale production, how much does it cost to modify the space per sow?
Wow. Okay. So I didn't have it on the top of my head, but then yes, indeed, it is quite a lot of costs. If you're talking about like from South to all the, you know, conventional confinement to group house, I think, yeah, I don't know exactly the cost, but yeah, that is indeed a lot. But then that's why, like my supervisors in the States, when he worked with the farmers, he usually kind of take a kind of step-by-step approach. So sometimes you don't tear down the whole farm, like, you know, redo everything. So you keep some of the stalls maybe for feeding, you don't close them, but then you remove maybe one row of the stall to make some space so that you can still use what you have already to kind of reduce the cost. And later on, maybe, you know, when you get the capital, then you can further, you know, maybe expand and then get rid of more stalls.
Thank Yeah. So Jen, which tool do you normally use to analyze your video recordings? And yeah, which tool do you normally use?
Okay. So yes, I think when I have, let's say, when I have the resource, I use Observer, but I understand that Observer, you know, is subscription based, so not everyone can access. So when I don't have the resource, like for example, now I use Boris. I think Boris is a very good, you know, freeware available for everyone. Sean, you know that we invited the author of Boris a while ago. The video is still on YouTube. Please do go and have a look if you're interested. then I think Boris will be the very useful tool. And I'm trying to figure out more about Boris, and then I'm definitely sticking to Boris.
Okay, thank you. That's a free advert. I also use it, so I like it too. So, Xuan, what is your opinion on ear notching? Notching? Yeah.
Yes, ear notching is also another very kind of nasty procedure. I think so in Europe, or I think in most of the places you don't see, but then yes, definitely I think in Asia, in the United States, they're still doing that. It's for, kind of cut off a little piece of the ear so that they can identify the pigs more easily. Now, of course, I think that's a painful procedure that needs to be phased out. I think more and more producers realize that, and then starting to use, ID chips, or some of them use more like tattoos on the ears. I think that's also better than ear notching. So yeah, I think I actually asked this question to my supervisors before, like, does anyone, have a look at the ear notching, but then not so many studies actually, but I think most people think that it's not really that common a procedure, like you don't see everywhere now, so nobody really studied it. But I think that would be, yeah, interesting to find out how painful it is for the pigs, and then what are the other alternatives for it.
Yeah, thank you. I have Downsy Paul here. I think he's a practicing pig farmer, though a young guy, but he wants to know a little bit about slaughtering, pig slaughtering. Yeah. Can you say something about that?
Slaughtering, like in general, or
stunning?
Yeah, I saw he was asking what is the most appropriate way to stun a pig.
Yeah.
So let's say the most common way in the EU now is carbon dioxide. So it's a gas stunning. Of course, it is also very highly debated. It is very commonly used because it's very cheap, efficient. Like you can stun the pigs in a group, which is good. So like, for example, in Taiwan, in East Asia context, usually we have the electrical stunning. So the pig get the electric shock on the on the head and in the heart. Very quickly, but then the problem is it depends on the operator. The operator has to be really good, and then the pig has to be stunned one by one, which they don't like. They like to be in a group. So that's why carbon dioxide is commonly used, I think, in maybe in the States and also in the EU. But then the problem with carbon dioxide is that it's reversible. So you will have, depending on pig, you may have maybe 10 seconds to 30 seconds or 40 seconds of struggling. They will feel kind of, loss of air. They will be choking. Some people, like some, NGOs, are already raising the issue on this. They want it to be changed. They want people to use maybe other ways, other gas. I mean, I think there are a lot of ongoing research. I think Humane Slaughter Association is a very good thing to follow. I think they will have a conference next year on the latest slaughters, in terms of pigs, chickens, poultry in general. So yeah, definitely follow their work.
Yeah, a question here from Oluwole Olufunke. I think, I don't know if she should be she read in one article that the shape of tail or position is related to disease resistance. Is there any relationship between the shape of the tail and disease resistance in pigs?
I didn't know, actually. I have to say I did not hear about this before. I mean, yeah, I don't know about it. I think probably it has to be like different species of pigs. I don't know, because usually the commercial breeds we have, they all have very similar shape of the tail. But no, actually, I haven't heard about it, but I will be interested to find out about more.
Yeah, and another question from her. She wants to know how pig welfare relates to the African swine fever. ASF. African swine.
So,
I think so. Maybe African swine fever.
How pig welfare related to African? It's a very tough question. Yes, I think Yes, I would say that it does. It does have some impact. For example, like in China, I know that because they have a very bad spread of African swine fever a couple, maybe 2 years ago, and then the really sad thing is that it impacted the smallholder farmers the most because they may be having the pigs outside, they are more free, but then somehow when of course they are less biosecure, so when the disease it hit them the hardest, which is very sad. And then I heard that after African swine fever, sometimes the smallholder farmer they cannot afford to go back into business because whenever they have pig, they are sick again. Then it's really economically very devastating for them. So I think in a sense that's kind of the loss of better welfare farming in the pandemic of the disease. And at the same time, I know that in order to be more biosecure, I know some farms are starting to be, they want to keep the pigs inside more and more. They want to be very, close off so that the disease won't come in. And but then at the same time, we lost track of what's happening on the farm because we're not allowed to go to see. Yeah, and then so yeah, I think there are definitely some impacts on welfare because of the African swine fever pandemic.
So thank you so much, Dr. Jen. I still have a few questions from you, and I think the floor is open for the participants. If you have further comments for our presenter, you are free to turn on your video, and if you have further comments, you can indicate by raising up your hand, and we will try to unmute you, and you can talk directly. But I have this question. Apart from the pain felt by the piglet or the pig at whatever stage that the tail is being, beaten, is there anything like a loss? For instance, if, I have my hand cut off, I can, psychologically, I may feel I'm not complete. Something is chopped off of my body. Do you think the animals have a feeling of something being, removed or missing from their body parts?
Yeah, I think that's a very important question. I think actually we don't know though. So normally when we cut up their tail, we just thought that it's like a decoration and we remove that, but it's not so. I mean, they are actually bone structure, they are nerve structure inside the tail. And I think some study already show that by docking the tail even at a very early stage, it can also have a very long-term neurological consequences for the pig as well. So of course it's very difficult for us to actually understand what the pig feels when he or she doesn't have the tail anymore. But then at least another way we try to understand is that the tail may have a function for the pigs, the commercial pigs. We never try to understand what, how do they use their tails, to communicate, or maybe to, like we know that for cats, they use the tail to balance or anything, but then we don't know. We just assume that the tail is not important for the pig, which is not true. So I think that's definitely an aspect we should look at, the function and importance of a tail for a pig.
Adekunle Soronke, you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sean. Yeah, thank you for the wonderful presentation, Jen Yun. I just want to ask you, because the major bottleneck we have currently in Nigeria is the issue of African swine fever. I want to ask, in Asian countries, is there any vaccine for this disease so far? Because if farmers have that vaccine, a lot of things will have been done to really alleviate farmers' challenge here in Nigeria, most especially in Africa. So is there a vaccine for this African swine fever in Asia? I don't want to characterize country, Asia generally. Is there a vaccine for it that can work for us here in Nigeria, most especially for the pig farmers? Thank you.
Thanks, Adekunle. I would love to say that we have, but then no, unfortunately we don't. I think that's the terrible thing about African swine fever is we don't have a cure, we don't have a vaccine, so all we have is biosecurity. So you have to try not to spread it. Us as humans, we are usually the ones that's spreading African swine fever, bringing meat products to farm that you shouldn't have, or going to places and maybe contaminated with contaminated boots and stuff. But no, I think they're still working on that. As far as I know, they haven't got a workable, effective vaccine yet. That's why African swine fever is still very devastating and very important.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Jen Yun, I've read it before that goats, they tend to remember the sound, the voice of their previous kids, even after several parturition. I was just wondering if there's any report of such in pigs. Do they recognize, as in the sow, do they recognize the vocalization of their piglets? They always have them in numbers. So how do they differentiate this vocalization, or how can a sow know that this piglet is mine and not mine?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question. I have to follow on that. I know that there are some groups doing the vocalization studies, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether they can recognize individual, or maybe as a litter, the mother knows about the the let's say the universal call the piglets are making. But yeah, I think that's an interesting point. I'll find out, and then yeah, I can let you know.
Who is this user? I don't know. What's your name? The user. Yeah, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Dr. Jen, we appreciate your presentation. In Nigeria, just like one of my colleagues also mentioned on the African swine fever, in China, they have not actually started the vaccine, but they are working on it. But there is a lot of measures they are taking concerning the biosecurity, which prevents the farmers from great loss. I read in an article again that there's a central area where they concentrate on fumigation, but not totally destroying those animals. But they actually be looking at the symptoms and then attacking it gradually so that it will not spread and not destroying all the animals at the same time. Can you please explain that area to us? If we too can start practicing some of this, because the African swine fever has really destroyed most of our farmers' stocks, and we need to really know that area very well in terms of the biosecurity, because there is the government is not making perfect intervention for supplying the farmers. Thank you.
Thank you. I wish I could say that I'm an expert in African swine fever, but unfortunately I'm not. But so I'm sorry, I cannot answer the very specific control measure. I'm sure that like in China as well as in Europe, Germany, Poland, and Belgium also, that they they have been suffering from African swine fever. They must have some solution how to kind of block it off. I understand what you mean, like block it off and not just do mass culling once you have the you have the disease. But yeah, I'm sorry, I can't really answer that. I don't want to just randomly say something. But then I hope that there are some. I believe there are a lot of resources available to teach people how to, and maybe smallholder farmer, how do you try to prevent using biosecurity as your tool to prevent it. I can find out more from my colleague who's more expert in epidemiology. I can find out more, and then yeah, I can give you some resource if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think Jen, maybe you can just drop your email address in the chat box, so she can contact you later for further information.
Absolutely.
Do we have any other participants that want to make one or two comments before we end today's meeting? We have far exceeded the time limit, but I see this as an opportunity to discuss issues that we are facing, maybe a farmer's discussion, and it's a good one. Paul Down say, I know you are a pig farmer, I'm not. If you have issues that you want to talk about, please, you can let me know, or you raise up your hand so I can unmute you. Dr. Ayola, I know you are also into pig enrichment. Feel free to discuss issues now. And Dr. Adebi from University of Ibadan. Feel free to talk about pig welfare issues. This is an opportunity to network. This is an opportunity to learn. Yeah.
Yeah, I dropped my email there. Yeah, feel free to contact me. I will try to answer as much as I can, or try to find someone who can.
Yeah, thank you so much. So any other comments? Yeah. Now, Jen, I have this one for you. I have several questions for you. I just want to give them the opportunity to talk. Yeah, the issue of tail biting, has it got anything to do with heritability? Is it a heritable trait?
Yes, I think some people believe that, and then at least one genetic company I know, like Topics, they've been really working on that. They want to know that, how they can prevent tail biting from the genetic point of a breeding company point of view. But as far as I know, that the latest is it is still very difficult to really catch the trait, because as I was saying, tail biting is very unpredictable. It's not like sometimes you want it to happen, it doesn't. So that's why it's very, especially for the, like you were asking me about tail biter, it's very difficult. It's probably more easier to predict the victims, but then for the biters, it's very difficult. So I think I remember there are some resources, some research talking about indirect genetic effects. So basically, they don't look at only tail biting; they look at, as a group of pigs, how does your genetic background actually affect you when you're living with other pigs? Are you, bringing benefits to the whole group, or are you reducing the whole value of your group? So I think that's the closest thing I know that we're making progress in terms of the genetics.
Yeah, thank you so much. And how were you able to test for the safety of the wood that you used in your enrichment bacteria? You talked about testing for the safety. How did you go about it?
Yes, so I actually went to the slaughterhouse. So after we gave different types of wood to the pig, I went to the slaughterhouse after they were slaughtered. So I checked the carcass, all the mouth and gum area to see whether there's any damage. So so of course the first thing is no pig died because of using the wood, and then we also want to make sure whether they hurt themselves chewing on the wood, but we didn't actually find anything. So I think, because imagine that in the semi-natural environment, they will go chew on anything like tree, wood trunks, anything. So actually, I don't think that's chewing on a piece of wood is going to cause them anything. But then we actually managed to demonstrate that in the slaughterhouse inspection.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think with this, we want to say a very big thank you from the Animal Welfare Group Nigeria. Thank you for your presentation and taking time.
Thank you for having me,
to explain in details a bit more about your PhD work and your postdoc work. And I also want to use this opportunity to appreciate everybody, and just to say that this will be the end of our webinars for the year 2021. And at least we've had, if not up to 19 or 20 webinar presentations and 3 inaugural virtual lectures, and we have really done well. I want to appreciate everybody. So hopefully we'll continue with our online presentation 2022. Hopefully we get to continue in 2022 and to see how we can foster collaboration with all the people that we have invited or who have participated in our meetings. I really want to say a big thank you for your support. And Jen, I also want to let you know that we need the support of ISAE, because I've tried to discuss most of those that are on this group at the moment are willing to join, but hopefully soon we'll be able to see how things will go well in a way to encourage and motivate them to join the ISA. because now we now have the Africa, West Asia, and to the best of my knowledge, we are just 10. So we need to see a lot of work to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well done, Sean, on this initiative. Really great. And then, yes, we will. I say we'll definitely support you as much as we can.
Thank you so much.